Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. We've got a packed house tonight, I see. I'm just being silly. So let's start tonight with just some announcements. I'll go over the schedule. Let me share my screen here. All right. I don't know if any of you have seen the latest newsletter. I put in a little blurb at the end about our website. So here's the calendar. If we go up to the website, we got the events here where I'm circling, and it brings up our calendar. And you can look at it in the calendar view. If you keep scrolling, it'll just bring up each event individually. And if you go down until you're like, up, oh, wait a minute. They used to have the past events. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So obviously tonight we're going to talk about in-camera settings and adjustments. And next weekend's the 5th. In a week and a half, we're going to be going out to the Everglades to do the Perseid meteor shower. It should be, if the weather holds out, it should be a great night. There's a very low, I think it's a new moon like 2 days before. We shouldn't have any moonlight getting into our shots. Plus, we're going to be going down a very well-worn, it's a fire road, because we're going to walk off the street. I'm not going to deal with any more car lights. I've had it with the car lights. So this is maybe third of a mile, half mile in, very, very short, big wide road. The Park Service drives down it all the time, I guess. Anyway, so that's on the 12th. And if, we get enough people to stick around late enough, it may go into the 13th. If y'all going to be like me and want to go to bed early, it will end on the 12th. Then we got our frame it on the 16th, and the theme is abstract photos. So get your photos in. You don't have to wait till the last minute. And then, of course, those of us that are participating, we've got our Wirtz Gallery starting on September 1st. That's in the First National Bank of South Miami. I think, do you remember when we did that last one, the 2018 Dolphin? We did one there before COVID, so it was a while ago. And they'll be there. All of our images will be hanging up for the whole month of September. So if you're in South Miami and you feel like parking and paying exorbitant amount to pay to park and to walk amongst a million people, go ahead and walk in the bank and take a look at our stuff. And then this one here, I really want to promote and I really want to emphasize. Next month will not be a last minute change and go to Zoom. We are going to meet in person. I spoke to the guy at the Moose. He's like, fine, you can have the big room. I'd really like to get a big crowd for Mark Potter. Mark is not just a photographer. He was years ago. He was a journalist and CNN correspondent. So he's been around. He's seen a lot, done a lot. I went online and did some research on him, and he's amazing. It's an amazing story what has happened to him since he retired, and his poor wife, and then this is what came out of that. So he's gonna talk about the book, and hopefully he'll talk a little bit about what he did before. And so if you can go to our public Facebook page, this was listed on the email, the newsletter, and share it with your friends. Ask, if your friends are interested. Everybody's welcome to come. And that will be on September 6th. And then after that, because of the sunrise, we're going to shoot our own sunrise at Matheson Hammock. So we're going to be up in Miami. That'd be September 9th. Has anybody shot at Matheson Hammock lately in the morning, like for sunrise? Nobody? I think they charge. I know it has been years since I've been there, and I went for a sunrise, and like there was a guy at the gate, but he says, "Ah, go ahead, I don't care." But I don't know how strict they are now.
Yeah, I've stopped there.
The guy
Yeah,
is
they
not
don't.
there no more.
What?
The guy is not there no more.
There's nobody there in the morning, so anybody can get in.
Not everybody, but
When I've gone, there's nobody there. Okay, good, good. All right, good. Then everybody can show up. Nobody has to pay. Of course, in September we got our frameits and our gallery takedown. So October, we're still working on that. Delphin's got to give me a little synopsis of his meeting. We're going to talk about because in October we're going to go to the Dia de Muertos. Did I say that correctly?
no.
No, shit. Sorry. The Day of the Dead in Coral Gables. So Delphin's going to talk about how to properly, you know, how to shoot for events and street photography, all that kind of stuff. All right.
They made a festival there with the Day of the Dead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do it with the Mexican consulate.
Okay.
Yeah, they've had it. If you go
I may
online,
get James to actually talk on that night.
you what?
I may get James, Keith, Keith, whatever his name is.
James.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Talk that night. Yes.
Shit.
So I continue butchering names. So enjoy.
Oh, this has got a pretty easy name to pronounce. James Keith. James, a member of the club.
Hey Barb,
he-
what time is the what time are we going to be hanging the gallery show?
The what?
What time will be hanging?
What time
Yeah,
hanging the show at the works?
I don't know. That's all up to Delphin.
September 1st on a Friday. I have to check the hours. They do close early. So
It's a bank. So
it's a
yeah,
bank.
it's got to be
Yeah,
done.
they don't open late. I have to actually check to see what are the hours, but most likely it will be the afternoon, like from noon to 4 or something like that.
Get them all hung in that amount of time.
Yeah, we should be able to. Then or they can kick us out.
Okay.
It isn't that difficult. They have a hanging system, so as long as they bring us their hooks, which they do have, it doesn't take that much time.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, that may be a problem for me. I'll see. I may have to send mine with something.
Yeah, I mean, last time I think the only problem we had is somebody put a try to actually hang instead of a hanging wire. They had used like some almost solder wire, and it snapped and fell.
Well, I'm just waiting on one
we
more.
had that. We had a couple of folks that didn't have wires, and
yeah, the people that if they bring their art and it does not have a wire, they may have to come at a later date and hang it. You know, we're not gonna. I'm not gonna be. I think we're very clear what it needs to be done to be hung, and I'm not gonna be going bananas with that. Take responsibility. We're all grown adults.
Yeah, I'm just waiting on
speak for yourself.
I'm waiting on one more person to return their sheets to me so I can get a full count of what everybody's gonna. Well, actually two. One person submitted, but I don't think they're gonna print a 4x5 inch print for the bank.
Could be 4 by 5 foot.
Well, the form is in inches, and this person put 4. I want to double check because some people don't always get it very accurate, you know? This adult thing doesn't fly very well with some people. Anyway, so one more we're waiting on to get the sheets back, and then everybody is in. I've got everybody, all the dimensions listed. So, all right. Any other questions about our upcoming schedules? I think we're going to get a lot of people from Mark.
From where?
for Mark's talk.
Ah. I'll be there.
Oscar, you're buddies with him, right?
What?
Are we gonna send a Kindle Club?
I just noticed Delphin's t-shirt.
What does it say?
I got one like that.
Okay. Rolanda, you still in with the KCC, right?
Yeah.
Would you like to invite them to our little Mark Potter talk next month?
Okay. I'll tell
I'll
him
send-
that is on September, right?
September 6th, yeah. You want me to
Okay.
send you an email? With all
Yeah,
the details?
yeah, you can send me an email.
Okay.
I'll let
Okay,
them
so go ahead. No, what?
I'll let them know.
Great. Great. All right, did everybody got the camera?
I'm here, okay, and I just had the mic muted because there's a lot of noise.
Right. No, I know you guys go out and shoot a lot. I hope you're gonna tell all your friends to have them come, his friends come
Oh
too.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
That'd be great.
I'm sure Captain Ozzy will be out there too.
Good, good, yeah. All right, so everybody have their cameras? Nope, mine's upside down.
Uh-huh. Well, we need it.
Well, the whole premise of this meeting, we were supposed to get together to do it, but I really didn't think anybody was going to show up because we were just going to have kind of like a round table, talk about some of the settings in the newer cameras. You know, when I got this camera, well, not this one, the other one, the mirrorless, and it just boggled my mind, all the different things in the menu. And I thought, I think maybe if we go over some of these, a lot of the stuff is probably not stuff that we're going to use. I was reading through each one individually last night, and a lot of the stuff just creates JPEGs, and that's not something that I'm interested in talking about. But and a lot of the functions only apply to JPEG photography or movies. So, but the things that I wanted to talk about, oh God, I gotta pull this up. Hold on a second. I had it up and then I moved it. There's a couple of functions that I wanted to talk about. And then I wanted to talk about exposure bracketing, focus stacking, and and these are all in camera, and time lapses. So there's it's pretty neat. Some of the and most of the new cameras have these functions. God almighty, where is this? Oh, there it is. Whew.
And non-Nikon users can chime in with their settings for their cameras.
Well, I brought up websites for Canon and Sony just to make sure that these were all in there, and they were. And pretty much, and I thought maybe if I went through mine, if you would go to find yours on your brand of camera, and you can follow along as I'm showing you because there's my Nikon. I wanted to get to another thing here. Anyway, so let's start here. I'm just going to read off my little prompter. When someone gets a new camera, how many people actually really read the manual cover to cover? I mean, good Lord, it's unbelievable. I said, yeah, I'm not going to read this. When my first camera, I remember going online to a YouTube, and I found some guy that pretty much explained all the functions that I need to know, and so I didn't bother with the manual. And that was a long time ago. So now I went to go look, and there's actually an online manual. You can click on different settings that you want to know about, and it's there. So it's not just a scanned document that tells you, like, it's not just something like, where are we here? Something like this, and then you have to look at it you can actually click on features, and all the manufacturers have them. So if you don't know your own camera, I highly recommend you go into your, whatever search engine you use, type in your brand, the make and model of your camera, and then manual, type in manual. And if you keep scrolling, you'll find, and it might just say online manual.
No.
So I'm gonna see if I can
If
share
I can jump in, actually Nikon has an app called the Nikon manual viewer. And you can add all of the, I don't know if you can see my thing, but you can see all of the cameras I own, and there's manuals for all of them. And you
Yeah,
just,
but this is different. This is, I'm sorry, I can't stare at a phone and then try to work my camera. That just, but when I'm sitting here in front of my computer, I can get my big 27-inch screen up and I can see and I'm going to show you here. I'm getting ready to share my screen. So this is the online manual. Let me go back to the original here. So I just Googled it. Nikon Z7 II manual. And right here, Z7 II, Z6 II online manual. So it's not just a PDF copy of the manual. This is the actual, you can click. So I want to look up, let's see, display index. And each one is going to look a little bit different. But they have the table, you can clickable table of contents. You can scroll down here, getting to know the camera, first steps, basic settings. The I menu, we've got a little information button. Menu guides. So this is what I want to learn. Menu guides. I'm gonna hit the plus, and it brings up more. So if it's just a PDF of your actual paper manual, you're not gonna get this. But this here, and I was just blown away. I'm like, this is awesome. Because if there's stuff you don't know about, all you gotta do is click on it. So my menu, retouch menu, setup menu, custom settings, playback, shooting menu. Here we go. The photo shooting menu. And then it shows here, and I think all of them. So this is the Canon. The Canon one has displays. Oh, shoot. Hold on. I gotta move the. Everybody has this problem. The little zoom toolbar. And then Sony also has, so I could let's see here. This is a Sony website. Does anybody here have a Sony? I think everybody's Canon or Nikon, right? Norma's Nikon. Rolando, you're Nikon, right?
But I don't have nothing new.
What kind of camera do you have?
All my cameras are at least 7 years old.
Well, that's fine. Everything I want to talk about, you can do manually. So, the thing, the manufacturers are doing, they're adding features so that you can do things easier. It doesn't make it any better. Some of the things it is an improvement. I will give you that. The things that I really love about the mirrorless is the in-camera stabilization, because I can shoot handheld so much more than I could before. But everything else, it can be done in any camera. So yeah, if there's a camera, if there's a setting, if there's a function in your menu that you're like, I wonder what that is, Google is your friend. I did that when I first started learning Lightroom, and I didn't know about the different tools, and I said, well, let me see what this does. So I kind of looked at the tool name, and then I typed it in, and my God, videos came up, articles came up, and you can learn so much. So instead of not knowing what half of your camera can do, it's best to sit down and look things up, even if you don't use it, because most of this stuff I wouldn't use. Now, what we're going to talk about is the set picture control. This is like the they call it profiles, I think, in Lightroom, where you can have it's not really a preset, or they say it's not a preset. I think it's a preset. Whatever they want to call it, I don't care. They call it a profile. So this is where you get your black and white. You can have a very flat looking raw file. You can have it a little bit more popped. We'll go through those. Then we're going to go through long exposure noise reduction. All cameras have that. All DSLRs had it. My old D7100 had it. Because I think that's something important. Vibration reduction. That's something that's only, I think, in mirrorless, but it's just a quick discussion. All your lenses have them. Well, most of your lenses have them. Exposure bracketing, all cameras have that. My old camera had it, my old DSLR. And then there's a function called HDR in my camera. I don't know if this is something that's in other brands. And we'll talk about multiple exposures, which I think that's only a mirrorless function. Time lapses, and if we have time, some focus stacking. So I'll try to go quickly. So we're going to talk the picture control. It's in Nikon, it's called set picture control. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go, picture control. And this is where you'll see you can have a standard look, you can have a neutral look, vivid. Is everybody looking on your own camera, or are you just going to listen to me? I can't.
Barb, is this affecting just your JPEGs, or does it do something to your RAW file?
No, this is your raw file. This is what's going to look like on the back of your screen. It will not affect your raw file, but it will affect what you see on the back of your screen. So if you go into your settings and change it to monochrome, what's that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, for Canon, what you see on the back of the screen is a JPEG.
Yeah. Yeah, but if you change your picture control or whatever your brand calls it to black and white, you're still shooting. If you're shooting raw, it's still going to come out in color, but you're just going to see a rendition of what it could look like in black and white, what the camera is giving you.
Okay.
And I've done this because I do it myself. I set mine is set at standard, which I'm going to change it because there was a lot going through this that I didn't even realize. And I've been, I've listened to a lot of different people, and a lot of people say you want a flat file. You want a flat raw file when you go into your processing, unless you don't like processing. But you can either have the camera process for you, or you can do it. I'm a control freak. Delphin can vouch for that. I want control.
Oh yeah.
So obviously monochrome is black and white. The flat feature. Let me see. I'm looking at a word document that you can't see. Okay, so here is monochrome. There's flat. It's not showing here. It's on another up menu. But flat is basically the flat is the very little contrast and very low saturation. They recommend it's using for people for like movies, for video. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen movies, that they color cast them for a certain effect. Nighttime, if it's seedy night, like Detroit or something, New York, they'll color it like green or something like an orange light. For our purposes, and it's not recommended because you really got to add the color back into it. The neutral is here's the neutral, and that is closest to the original scene's color and saturation. The portrait one here, portrait, and everybody thinks, oh, it's just for portraits, but, and, excuse me, in the Nikon website, they say it is close to neutral, but the skin tones are a little bit more punchy, and it has more shadow detail. So it's a little bit more saturation and more detail in the shadows if you use the portrait mode. I think it's a profile, and I don't really understand what it does. It's some way the camera interprets what data it's getting. Obviously, you can change it. You can do whatever you want. It's still a raw file. The standard is just a little bit more saturated, a little bit more punchy. And then landscape, of course, is even more. If you go through in your Lightroom, you're going to see similar, and you can click on each one and you can see what it does to any image you have. I wouldn't do it right now, but the landscape is pretty intense, and then vivid is your maximum contrast and your maximum saturation. You know, that's something, if you're one of these people that loves to just punch people with greens and yellows, and you've got this nuclear sunset going on, and you are shooting raw and JPEG, boom, you take that picture in vivid, you can instantly upload it to your Instagram and you be going viral because it's vivid. I don't recommend that, I'm just saying. All right, so that's all I'm going to say about the picture control. This is what's what I'm doing here with the meeting isn't to teach you how, it's to show you what's available. And there's so much available. And there was another feature that I used once and I got upset because in the Nikon, if you can change the crop ratio. You know, you can make it a square, you can make it 3:2, 4:5, 16:9. And Sony and Canon, it's like shooting in black and white. If you see black and white in your camera, you'll get it back in color on your screen. Once you download it or upload it or whatever to Lightroom, it's a raw file. Nikon, now when you do the crops, it gets rid of those pixels, where Canon and Sony does not. You can shoot, let's say you want to do a panel like 16:9 because it looks cool, and you're one of these people that wants to see it as is on the back of your screen or in your viewfinder. It'll shoot it in 16:9 if you have Canon or Sony, and then when you bring it, excuse me, upload it to your Lightroom, it'll open up like that. But if you click the crop button, you'll see that those pixels are still there. You can change it, and the Nikons you cannot. So I found out the hard way when we went to the zoo, because the time I had used it before, I was doing a panel and we went to the zoo and I thought nothing of it, and I'm shooting, and I get back home and everything's 16:9. And you can't get that back. Nikon will not give those back to you. And I even wrote to them, but it's a long story. I won't get into it. But we're working on trying to get them. I don't know why they can't do it when Sony and Canon can. So anyway, if you are a person that likes to see that stuff on the back of your screen, you can go ahead and change it. And, you know, it's something to play with. If you're sitting around, just grab your camera, just point it somewhere in your house. You don't have to, nobody's got to see this but you. Okay, so the next one we're going to go into is the long exposure noise reduction. Let's see where I can find that. Here we go. So we've got, okay, long exposure noise reduction and high ISO noise reduction. Now, I did some looking and thinking, well, this is the same thing. I mean, long exposure is going to do to your image the same as high ISO. Going to bring in a lot of noise and a lot of hot pixels. So I found this out. Now, it might be different for Canon and Sony, but the long exposure noise reduction works on the raw image. The high ISO noise reduction only works on JPEG. So I'm not going to talk about that. We're just going to talk about the long exposure noise reduction. So what this is, and we've talked about this a little bit in the night meetings, that when you turn on your long exposure noise reduction and you're out, you know, you've got a 20, let's say you're shooting the Milky Way, you got a 20-second exposure to properly expose for the Milky Way. You know, you got it on a tripod, pretend this is a tripod, and I shoot. And so it does this 20 seconds, and then it closes the shutter curtain, and it exposes another 20 seconds. What that'll do, if you have hot pixels, now I don't know if most of you know what hot pixels are. You'll see them in your image. They'll be in the shadows or the dark areas, and they'll be like little tiny green or blue or red little, they look like little stars, but stars don't belong in the shadows. So those are called hot pixels, and it's something to do with a heated up sensor or a higher ISO. So what happens when you close the when your noise reduction feature kicks in, is it closes the shutter, and it takes the same image in 20 seconds, and it subtracts, because those hot pixels will still be there, but nothing else will. So the original Milky Way shot with all the hot pixels will subtract the black version, and it will get rid of all those hot pixels, and it will leave you with a cleaner file. Now, when do you not want to use this? Because if you're doing a time lapse, you do not want to wait, because it's doubling however long your shutter is. If you're doing a 15-minute exposure, you got to wait another 15 minutes. So you gotta weigh that out. So you got to figure it out. And then anything shorter than a second, it will not engage. So yeah, okay, yeah, this is what I wrote. Long exposure noise reduction is a camera setting. Oh, who's that? All right. Everybody, if you want to mute yourself. So it takes two photos, one after the other. First photo is your original frame. Second photo is just a black dark frame. And like I said, it subtracts the pixels. The dark frame exposure, here, I already said that. Okay. When not to use it, like I said, time lapse, and if you're doing like exposure blending, photo stacking, focus stacking, you do not want to turn that on, because things could move. You know, if you take an image right after one after the other, not everything, things aren't going to move that much in that kind of time. But if you have to wait, you know, a half an hour or something, clouds move, stars definitely move. So you don't want to use that then. And like I said, the high ISO noise reduction is only for JPEGs. So I wouldn't even bother.
So Barb, given that we've now got in Lightroom and things like Topaz, really good noise reduction software, you think there's even any need for this more?
Probably not. I mean, I haven't tried it with hot pixels. I'm sure it gets rid of them. I haven't really used it a lot. I use it to, you know, like in my dark images that I don't have hot pixels, and you probably don't need it. You know, it's up to you. And there's some people like to get everything as right as you can get it in camera. So that's up to you. No, it's absolutely not necessary. Most of the time, I do not use it, because to be honest, I can't be bothered. There's a lot of things that are just too much faff. I'm talking like the Brits. Faff, too much faff. I can't be bothered with all the details, so I just leave it off. I did use it once when I was shooting with the old the old camera that I had, that big one that I bought from Jason, that big DSLR. And it was a beautiful, beautiful Milky Way and beautiful night, and I was doing a panel, and I did not want to screw it up. So I shot it with that, and it turned out great, and I was glad I did it. But that was a few years ago. I didn't have Topaz. There was the denoise, didn't exist in Lightroom. So you know, it's up to you. You absolutely do not need to use it, but if you want to use it, it's available. So vibration reduction, and this is something that's probably, I think it's only in oh my god, I'm brain farting here. In mirrorless cameras. Where is it? Oh my god, I can't find anything. Vignette. It's here somewhere. Basically, vibration reduction. I think the mirrorless cameras, it must have some kind of gyroscope inside of it that allows you to move a little bit more than you could before with your old DSLRs. It's not perfect, but I remember when I first got the Z6 and I went out doing sunset and there was a storm coming and I was like, oh my god, this and this, and I was running around and I didn't want to put it on a tripod and I just kept shooting just to test it out. And I was amazed at how good it did handheld, and I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away. Best thing I did. So I was very happy with it. Those of you with older cameras, a lot of your lenses will have the noise reduction, a little thing here. You click, or not noise reduction. Jesus, brain. Oh, sorry. What am I saying? Who's chatting now?
The VR reduction.
Yes, vibration
Vibration.
reduction.
Yeah.
I'm using the Z7 too. I have a plain Z6 that's in my bedroom, and I got a bonus last year, so I decided to blow all my cash on a camera and a lens. So I bought the Z7 too because I got a little somebody asked me in the chat, so I got a little crazy. I went, I don't care, I want the best. Well, the best that I can afford. So I wanted those 50 megapixels. I had a little bit of gas. So I bought the Z. So I have the Z6 that I keep as a backup, and the Z7 too. Now I'll probably shoot the night stuff with my Z6 because the lower megapixels are actually better for some reason with night photography. I don't know how, and I don't want to get into that. I'm sure we could talk about that later. Delphin, I'm sure, knows why. I don't remember. Huh?
I do.
All right. Who's I?
I know how to do it, Delphin.
If you can explain it quickly, tell us why the smaller megapixel cameras do better at night.
Okay. Normally every pixel on that sensor is a bucket. Okay. And it's gathering light. So if you have a lot of megapixels, you have a bunch of little buckets. And they normally don't get as much water, but basically much light ray into them. So the gain goes up and they get noisy. On a smaller megapixels, they got big buckets that can collect a lot of light. Almost good example would be your aperture on your lens.
Right.
You know, when it's open, it allows more light in. If it's small, not too much light gets in. Same thing with megapixels.
Huh. So the bigger buckets attract more light
Can gather more light, yes.
and with less noise.
Exactly.
Gotcha. So yeah, I remember when I got not the Z, whatever, that one I got from Jason, the D4. He even said because that was a 16 megapixel. My previous camera was 24, so he says, "Oh, it's really good at night," and it was a great camera for that. Anyway, so that's the reason I will probably use the Z6. They are almost identical as far as the features. They are identical in the feel, in the weight, in everything. It's just you got more megapixels and you got a few more functions, that's all. And I get 2 card slots in the Z6 II and the Z7 II, the second rendition, they both have 2 card slots. So
So what's the difference between the Z6 and the Z7 then, if they have 2 cards?
well, the Z6 and the Z6 has 24 megapixels. The Z7 has almost 50.
Okay.
That's the biggest difference. And they each now have a second rendition. So the Z6 II and the Z7 II, those they finally added in the second memory card slot.
Okay.
So both the plain Z6 and the plain Z7, one card slot. Which, yeah, that's another reason, because I bought way too. I should have, if I waited another month, I could have gotten the second rendition, but I could not wait. I've said this story. Delphin corrupted me with his. He let me borrow his, and I had it one night, and I had to get my own. So I did. All right. Where was I here? Vibration. Okay. Auto exposure bracketing. A lot of people call it, AE bracketing, auto exposure. It's basically just you taking a high. Oh God, my brain is fried. It's like HDR, a really bright shot, a really dark shot, and then one metered in the middle. That's basically what auto exposure bracketing is. So technically, it takes a predetermined amount of images, either 3 or 5 or 7, however many you choose. So the camera will take those number of images consecutively, one at a properly metered exposure. So when you're looking through your camera, you get that little meter, and if you increase the speed, it goes down or up. You got that level. That's your meter. So it'll shoot one at the middle, which your camera is assuming is 18% gray. And then it'll take another one right after that at a higher exposure, and then one right after that at a lower exposure. How many stops of light is also determined by you. You choose that. I have ideas on how much, depending on the scene. If you're looking at something with, let's say you're shooting a sunrise somewhere and the sun hasn't come up yet, but it's pretty bright. You're shooting, let's say, a bush or a set of trees or something. So there's a really dark shadows because your sky is still pretty bright. It's not as bright as it could be, but it's still bright enough that you can't get all your darks and all your lights within the boundary. I would just use one stop of light. Now, if you're shooting, let's say the sun's up and it is extremely bright and you've got huge dynamic range, I would go up to 2 stops. So it'll take a medium, and then it'll take a shot 2 stops of light more, and then 2 stops of light less. All DSLRs have this feature. I used to use it all the time. DSLRs, the older the cameras, the less of the dynamic range they have. But so I use it a lot with my old D7100. With the mirrorless, you don't need it because the dynamic range, the better the sensors get, the larger of a range you can go from darks to light. But you still might need it, and it's a great thing to know how to use if you're in a situation that you need it. Do I have that up here? No, I do not. I'm sorry. I'm just yammering away and you're not looking at anything. See, there's look at all these things. So many things here. What?
So Barb, one of the things that I do is that, at least on the Canons, you can tell it where to take the quote unquote correct exposure. So lots of times I'll move that one down, half a stop or even a full stop, so that you get basically 2 stops, 1 stop in quote unquote correct.
Right.
Especially for sunsets, I find that to be a better approach lots of the time.
Well, personally, I do it all manually. I take 2 shots. I do one for the highlights, one for the darks. I don't bother with it over and over. And like I said, I'm a little bit of a control freak, so I didn't realize, you can just do this yourself. You can meter, you look at your camera, and okay, you don't want to blow the highlights, so you meter for the sky. You point whatever it is in the sky, take a shot. Then you point at your darkest make sure that is exposed properly. And you can just, you know, put them together in Photoshop. Personally, that's what I do. But we have all these functions, and if you don't want to do it like that, this is absolutely a way to go.
I find it really useful for sunrise, sunset, and stuff like that, simply because you can take, 3 or 5 shots, bang, 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 using a remote control on a tripod, all of those kinds of things. And I do it a lot for those kinds of things and virtually nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so here you can see this on my screen. This is the median look, and this is the dark one, and here's the bright one. So the bright view is going to show up, it's going to give you all the shadow detail, and the darker view is going to give you all the highlight detail. And then this is the median, the one where the meter is in the middle, 18% gray. And then when you get it to your processing, you just put them together in Lightroom or Photoshop HDR, and it'll put them together for you. And then you have all that dynamic range you can play with in processing. So you start.
Choose to pick one of them that you really like.
What's that?
Or you can just choose one of the exposures that you really like.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. That's another thing I wanted to mention is, people say, oh, well, do you take 3 or 5 or 7? I said, you take as many as you want. You can always delete them. If you don't take them and you needed them, your shot is ruined. So if you look here, it'll ask you for how many shots. Right here, number of shots. Generally, I do 3. But when I used to shoot with the D70-100, I would go as far as I would do 5. Just because, especially if I was like on a trip somewhere and I knew I was never coming back. I said, you know what? I don't know what I'm getting. This is kind of like a little bit of insurance. You're going to make sure that you're not blowing out a highlight or you're blocking up your shadow somewhere. So, but just normally I do a 3 frame. That's what the F is here. And then you choose your increments. I personally just use 1 stop. I don't do the third of a stop or a stop. You can choose, if you go into your camera settings, you can choose the interval of the stops. You can have it just shoot a third of a stop more, or 2/3, which is a 1/7 of a stop. I'm like, you know what? That's just, come on. 1 stop, that's plenty. Because your software nowadays can lift shadows up like you wouldn't believe. Maybe if you're a professional, you're going to do that. But if you were professional, you're going to probably do it manually. So if you're going to look at your own brand of camera, excuse me, take a look at what your actual manual says as far as how to set it up and stuff. So this is what mine's showing, and I glaze over when I look at this. I'm like, I can't. But this is kind of showing you. So you got your 0 meter here, and then let's say you're going to shoot here. It's a third, well, it's 2/3 of a stop, I guess, over, and then it's going to do another shot under. And then if you do 1/3, it's 1/3, and then 1/3 here. So this is just showing you what it's going to look like. And your camera will look similar, not quite exactly the same. So yeah, you can set that up and it's great. Like Hugh said, you put it on a tripod, you got one of those wireless things. Do I have one here? No, I don't. I don't know where it is. Oh, I'll just pretend this is it. So I can hit it, boop, boop, boop. I'm not touching the camera. If you have your camera set in continuous mode, you just got to hold it once. You just got to hold it down while it shoots. If you have your camera in single shot mode, then you got to hit it the number of times that you chose for your shot. I made that mistake first time I tried it because I was like, okay, I pushed the button once and it only took 1 picture. I'm like, well, it's supposed to take 3 pictures. I didn't realize I had to hit it 3 times. It didn't take long. I learned it. Yeah, that's what you got to do. There's a lot of other features, white balance bracketing and all this other crap. I'm not going into that because that only works with JPEGs. If you're one of those people that does not shoot RAW ever, this will help you, because if you're shooting in JPEG, you have to get everything right. It's like shooting film. If you got something off, there's no fixing it. Well, I mean, you can, but I shouldn't say that. You can't edit JPEGs in software. It's just better with RAW files. So we're not gonna get into that. What was our next? Let me see if I've missed anything here. Our exposure bracketing. Well, I think we hit it all. Yeah, and then you just take it into Lightroom. If you highlight the however number of shots you want to use, right click HDR blend, and it'll put them together. Same with the camera raw in Photoshop. I'm sure all of you know how to do that. Okay, I wanted to talk about this here. Oh, high dynamic range. I'm looking at something and I'm showing you something else. Here. High dynamic range. Pretty much the same thing, but I got all excited because this is like easier, but it does not give you a RAW file. It gives you a JPEG. Even though you're telling it RAW, RAW, RAW. Now, if you have a Canon or a Sony, double check. Maybe yours will put it into a RAW file. The Nikons will not. And I know I think it was this one, because we just had a firmware update and it took away that feature. It made everything JPEGs, which I shared on my photography page a petition that one of the Nikon shooters from Germany shared. So I'm like, yeah, what the hell. So anyway, that's another version of auto exposure bracketing. I think it's a little bit easier, a little bit more intuitive, but your camera may not have it. I don't know. So, let's see, what should we talk about next? What time is it? Well, 8 o'clock. Okay. Multiple exposure. See, this is something that I played with when I went to Tennessee last year. And it was, we were out playing and I was trying to get creative, and I was like, oh, I'm going to shoot like a picture of this waterfall, and then I'm going to shoot a picture of this tree. And then I'm thinking in my head, I'm going to put these together in Photoshop and then blend them, because I was learning how to, with the blend modes and opacity. And I thought, oh, this is going to be cool. So I was telling the instructor, her name is Colleen Minnick, and she's like, well, you can do that, right? Your camera. And I'm like, what? She's like, well, yeah, what camera? And I told her. She goes, oh yeah, you can do that. So she showed me how to do it, and I was like, wow. It blew my mind what it could do. So let me bring it up. So what it is it basically, it just takes 2 pictures. But so you tell it what to do in advance, just like your bracketing. If you want, some people really get into it and they'll do like 3 or 4, and they'll mix textures with certain subjects, and they'll mix, maybe a sky to get that kind of luminosity in their image, and it's amazing. So you can see here with this cat. And inside of it, you can change the blend modes as well. I usually leave them average, but so let's say you take a picture of a black cat, and then you got a picture of this clover here. But when you put it together in your camera, it'll look like that. Or if you do it another way, it can make it look. So it actually puts 2 pictures. So like what I did was I shoot, and then what it does inside your camera is it'll have like a blurred, not a blurred, a very low opacity image in your viewfinder of what you just shot. So when you move around, you can see what it looks like in front of something else. And I was like, holy crap. So I'd seen that there's a shot that I have of this arching tree. And it looked really cool, but I wanted to put more greenery in it. So I pointed at some leaves, and it's just like a sea of green, and it just, I loved it. It was so much fun to shoot with. And that's something to do when you're like, I don't know what to do. And you know, intentional camera movement. That's kind of like a whole other thing. You can mix moving your camera with a still shot with a movement, and you can do that all in one shot. Unfortunately, the final product will be a JPEG, but it will give you the raw files. So let's say you take a picture of the cat, and then you take a picture of the clover here, whatever, 4-leaf clovers. This image here put together will be a JPEG, but it'll give you these two in raw format. So if you don't like what this did, or if you want to edit a little bit, you can definitely pull these two into Photoshop, make your edits, and do something different with it. You don't have to be stuck with this cat or that view. So if you have that feature in your camera, highly recommend looking into it if you want to get a little bit creative. If you don't have that feature, you can unbelievable. You can go out and take as many shots as you want. Put them in as layers in Photoshop, and then change the blend modes. Just highlight them all, change the blend mode, and see what it does. Because it will put them together. A lot of times it will do things different with lights, darks, and you'll be surprised what it'll do for your images.
Does it show you in the preview what it would look with the images blended, or is that only after you take the pictures?
After, yeah. Well, it'll show you if you're looking like, let's say I took this picture of the cat, right? And then I'm going to point, because the cat's sitting in my chair. I took a picture of the cat, and then I'm pointing on the ground where the clover is. And what my camera is doing is it's showing me a like a low opacity version of the cat. So I can move my camera just a little bit, put it exactly where I want it, hit the shutter button, and it's there. And so you know where it's going to be. Like that final image is going to be a JPEG, and you can't change it. But like I said, these both will be individual raw files, and you can put them together in Photoshop, like I had originally planned to do when I was shooting, when that girl told me about this. So, and this is another feature that other cameras will give you a raw file at the end. Other systems, Canon and Sony, will give you a raw rendition. Nikon will not.
That's in the new ones done. I
Yeah,
just tried it on the DSLR, my DSLR, it gave me a raw file.
For what kind of, for this?
Yeah. On the old DSLR that I have,
Yeah.
multiple exposure, it gave me a raw file.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
I didn't know it had that in the old. I didn't know that even existed on the old cameras.
Yeah, and the very, very old cameras, there were options of 3 pictures, and then cameras that came after, like my D500, you have the option up to 9, I think.
Oh, wow.
So you can take multiple exposures like that. And I think like the one that you have, 7100, probably is 3 or maybe more. I don't know, because that's a borderline when it came out.
Huh, I'll have to look. You
And
know what? I never really looked at it, and if I did, I didn't know what it meant, so I probably just ignored it. I had no idea.
it gave me a raw file, NFE.
Nice.
Okay.
Very nice. Thank you, Rolando. I didn't know that. See, you learned something new today. Anyway. So, but in the mirrorless, you can, a lot of this stuff you can do right in camera. You can turn on different overlays while you're shooting rather than doing it on the computer. Honestly, I can't see that in the field. Most of my, I hate to sound pretentious, but most of my vision comes afterwards. I don't see stuff when I'm there. I just see cool things in the field. I'm like, oh my God, look at that. That looks so cool. I don't get the creative. Sometimes I do out in the field, but mostly it's in the computer where I'm like, oh wow, this would look good with that. And anyway, that's how I am. Not everybody's like that. Everybody's different. Everybody can shoot what they like, but let me tell you, if you're out somewhere and you're like, oh, the sun, the light's harsh, or it's flat, or I don't know what to shoot, just go out and start moving your camera around, play with the different functions, and it really it's amazing. I know Pilar's not here, but she's done some of that, and I can tell in her flower photos are just beautiful. So yeah, if you're bored, that's a great thing to play with, the multiple exposure here. So in the Nikon, you would go to the multiple exposure, click on that, and then you click blah 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 on, I'm sure on. Then you go to number of shots, which I was just learning at the time, so I only did 2, but you can go, like Rolando said, you can go higher. Then you go down to the overlay mode, which you can have average, which if you take, okay, like here they changed it to 3 shots. And if you use the average setting here, what it'll do is it'll give all 3 images the same amount of weight, technically weight in that image. But you can change it to something else. There's yeah. I forgot where it said. There's I think dark, so it will give the dark tones more weight. So if you've got 2 shots, one has more, like the cat. Let's go back to the cat. So this is the dark. Here we go. The light and blend mode. So this only brings out the lighter tones, and the dark and blend mode only brings out the darker tones of the image. So you can see here, there's a white background behind the cat, and that's why there's a white background here. But in the darken, or the darken mode, it brings out the darkest pixels, which are the background of the leaves. So it's just another part of the setting here. But they choose the overlay mode, which is probably what I did. Save individual images. You can save them however you like. I always, everything's raw. Shoot it raw. And then overlay, that's what the overlay shooting is. Seeing your original shot inside your viewfinder. And that's only something that can happen with the mirrorless. You can't, I don't think it can do that in a DSLR.
No.
So let's see, choose an option, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, you can choose as many and you can put them together and start shooting. But like I said, if your camera has it, if you don't know, go look through your menu in your shooting menu and just scroll through it and see if there's anything multiple, and then look it up in your manual and see what it does. Play with it, because you could have a lot of fun. So that's multiple exposure. Any questions on that? Anybody think that would be fun? I think it would be fun to do a field trip like that, but I'm afraid if I did it, nobody'd show up. Story of my life. Anyway. So what we got next? Focus. Now Nikon calls it focus shift. I think they're all gonna call it something different because it's just focus stacking. Let's say you're shooting. I got my 2 phones here, right? And then I'm shooting here. Oh, but I got a really wide angle lens and it's on a thing and I want to get everything sharp. That's when you would focus at the point closest to the lens, and then the now you obviously this has been done manually for years, and I still do it manually because I really didn't understand how to do it. And like I said before, it's just a pain in the butt. I don't want to have to worry about setting things up. Half the time, my camera isn't even set to the right time zone. It is now. I changed it last night. But you can choose. Now, remember when Bob Richardson used to talk about his macro? And he would have pictures and like bugs and stuff. And he took like 100 shots, all at different increments. Now, I don't know how he did it, if he had some kind of a implement that he used, but the new features in the mirrorless, if you have it, I think Canon calls it focus bracketing. Here's the focus bracketing. And I believe this is, oh, focus. I got the wrong thing here. I believe Sony calls, yeah, focus bracket. Sony calls it focus bracket as well. Nikon's got to be different and call it focus shift. Focus shift shooting. Basically, it's taking a shot at one point, and then you tell it how far apart from the next shot you want it to shoot. So if you're shooting a bug, you're going to want it very, very small because you want little increments. And you're only going to go so far. If you're shooting a landscape, you don't need it. You don't need 100 shots. You maybe need 3, 2 or 3, maybe 5 if you got a really low or high aperture, low f-stop. If you're shooting at like f2.8 and you're right next to like a rock or something, you got this beautiful sunset behind you, and you want everything in sharp focus, you start off by you have it on tripod, you're not moving your camera, you focus on the closest thing to your camera, and you tell it how many shots you want it to take, hit the button, and it just shoots. And that's what it does. Now, I'm not sure if it gives you, I think it gives you, I'm not going to say. It probably gives you a JPEG too. I'm not positive. I have never tried it in real life. I'm just reading. I was just reading here. So, you know, once you choose the focus shift, and then it'll ask you here 100 shots. Whew. And then the focus step width. Now, it's not 5 inches or 5 feet. This is the difference from each shot. So, I think your camera sensors it. So it senses what's in focus, and it'll go to the next and the next. So anyway, if you have this in your camera, this is definitely something to play with. If you want to, you know, I don't know. My favorite lens is the 100 to 400. I love that lens, and I get out in the field, and most of the times I come back and there's something out of focus because I didn't see it. I got tunnel vision. I'm looking at that subject, 30 feet away. I'm not paying attention to the tree to my left or the bush to my right or the rock that's right there. And they're totally fuzzy because I'm not looking at it. Will this have helped me? Probably not, because I probably wouldn't have turned it on. But if you know that you're like that, you can get it set up in the at home before you go out. So you're what do they call it? You're set for success. Get ready for success. So look it up at home. Get your camera ready at home before you go out, so you know how to do it. You know how to press the buttons, and then you can just set it. When I first got my Z6, the first mirror, the other one, I went out camping at those eco tents, and it was Milky Way night. So I had it set up. I went to bed and I set it up to do this time lapse movie, which is another feature that I'm showing you next. I didn't realize that it was gonna render an MP4. It wasn't. You're not gonna get shots. I thought I was gonna end up with 500 shots of the Milky Way that I would put together, but no, it only assembled them and it gave me an MP4. I couldn't edit it, so because my white balance is always daylight, it was yellow, and it was cool because you could see the Milky Way moving through the sky. But there is an occasion that I should have done my work at home before I went out, but I didn't do it because I didn't want to do it. So this is just something, if you've got one of them, I'd highly recommend trying it out. I'm gonna set up my camera so the next time we go out, I can use it. I won't use it, when we go to the Milky Way or the Perseid, but I think I want to go out this weekend. I'm not positive. Depends on my mood on Saturday. But if I do, I'm going to definitely try out some of these new features. All right, what do we got next? Multiple exposure, interval. Okay, interval timer shooting. Now this is now in the Nikon. Let me go back here. We have interval timer shooting, which is essentially time lapse. It's preset, you set it up, time lapse, and it'll shoot however many photos, and you will have that many raw photos. You put them, you assemble them in Photoshop. Time lapse movie, that does exactly what I just told you. It will create a video file after it's all done. I don't know what it does with the raw files. I guess it just deletes them, but so these are the two different things. Now, if when you're doing the time-lapse movie, I highly recommend that you get your white balance correct. You take test shots and make sure that it looks exactly like you want it to look before you start the movie. Learn from my mistake. Like I said, I set it up probably about 11 o'clock at night, went to bed. I'm in one of those tents, so the camera is right outside of my tent, and it's pointing up, and I can hear it click, 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 and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have such a great bunch of photos. And I didn't. I had a movie that lasted maybe 20 seconds. But anyway, the interval timer shooting. This is classic time lapse. You can do this manually. I've done it manually several times. And when I did start using the mirrorless for this feature, it was kind of a pain in the butt because, like I said, I didn't really do my homework ahead of time. I'm just going to learn in the field. I'm just going to push buttons and I'm going to figure it out. Yeah, a lot of errors. So the thing is that you choose a start time. So you got to pick a date. You got to pick a time. Now, if it's taking you 10 minutes to figure out how to set up this feature, you're going to choose a time and it's probably going to pass the time. So you have to go back and reset it because you didn't give yourself enough time. But you set the time, you set a date, and then let's see, choose day, time. And then you specify the interval between shots. So if you're like shooting during the day, it's just time lapse interval. If it's bright out, you want a shorter time. If you like however fast things are moving, like let's say you want a time lapse of moving clouds. If the clouds are moving fast, you want a faster interval so you can capture the movement. Now, if you've got really slow moving clouds, then you want to go a little bit slower because you want to capture movement. Obviously, the faster the interval, the faster you'll burn through however many photos. Let's say you want to do 300. I remember, God, is it hot in here? Whew. Getting a hot flash, sorry. When Robert taught us how to shoot time lapse, and I think 300 photos at 24 frames per second will give you a 10-second video. So I always would try for 300 shots. Now, the faster you shoot those 300, the shorter the interval of those 300 shots, the quicker your process will go. If you're shooting at night, 20 seconds in between, it's going to take you about an hour and a half, because or maybe an hour I think it is, because the longer the interval, the longer it takes. So it's basic interval shooting. You just plug it all into the camera and it does it for you. Rather than doing it on an intervalometer, you do it right here in camera. I think older cameras you could do it too. They just had the intervalometer right built into the camera. These have a little bit more features. You can choose an exposure smoothing. So like if you're doing a time lapse for like early in the morning, you're doing it from dark to sunrise. Your things are going to change because the light's changing and your exposure time is going to change. So there's a lot of things to think about. This is something that definitely you should look into, because if you want to do it properly, to really understand what each of these terms mean, you want to know which button it is you're pushing. Yeah, you don't want to be out there in the dark. Now I'm gonna do a time lapse and you don't know what you're doing. You don't know it's always best to figure it out beforehand, especially something with this many options. I mean, look at all these options here. It's crazy. So yeah, this is, you just find it on your menu and you just follow the prompts and you ask for the date, the time, the seconds. Now you have an interval, and then you have because you have to, when you're choosing, now this is basic time lapse, you have to add the interval to the exposure time. So if you're shooting a Milky Way time lapse, you've got 20-second shutter speed, shutter, whatever. You know what I mean. You want to add a second or a half a second to that, so your shot can process and then it can take another shot, because you want to shoot right after the other one's done. It won't do that automatically. You have to tell it half a second, and you have to add that to the exposure time. It can be a little complicated, but once you do it once, you'd be like, okay, you're getting it, you get it. It takes a little time. If you go through these little menus on your own manual or your own online manual with your camera, you can probably learn it a little bit quicker. Excuse me. So, and then when you're done, you'll end up with however many shots. That's how many you're gonna have in your card, and you put them together in Photoshop, or you can use one of the programs that come out. I think, Delphin, what are those programs called that puts together Helicon. Dolphin's sleeping on me. That's fine. I know I'm putting everybody to sleep.
I have a cat sitting on me.
Helicon is a focus stacking app, I think.
Okay, yeah.
There are a couple of different ones out there for doing time lapse, particularly star trails and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. So if this is something you're into, you're gonna learn it. You're not gonna learn it from me in this 10-minute explanation, but this is something that your camera can do for you. I highly recommend it is cool. The first time I did a time lapse, I just did it with my little, what I did to manually do it. Me and Cheryl went out to Anhinga once because we didn't want to go far, and there was a hellacious storm going on over probably the Bahamas. So we were just sitting there on the bench, pointing out to the ocean, towards the ocean, right? And I set up a time lapse. Holy crap! I mean, the lightning was going off, and when you put it together in Photoshop and you look at it, it's really cool. It's fun. Now, what are you going to do with it? I don't know. I don't think you can sell anything like that. Maybe you can put them on YouTube and show all your friends how cool look what I did. It's just fun. It's fun when you don't know what else to shoot and you just want to sit and shoot the breeze with your buddies. Set it up for time lapse and just have a good time. Let's see. Did I get everything? And now, I don't know if DSLRs have this. Maybe Rolando can pitch in.
Yeah, the internal intervalometer, yes. Some models.
No, the silent photography. There's a silent mode. Oh, you know what? I'm in the dial. It was a quiet mode. There's a quiet mode.
Yeah, the quiet mode.
Yeah, it wasn't totally silent.
No, but in DSLR, it's not quiet.
Right. No, it's not. I remember when we went camping the last time, I was on Loop Road taking pictures of birds, and I got out and I was real quiet. I was walking up and I didn't spook them. And then I just started shooting. I was just, I had the trigger and the birds were like looking at me, and all of a sudden they started flying away. I'm like, shit. So I stopped. And then I remembered there's a silent photography feature, and it is totally silent. You don't hear anything. So that's something, when you're spying on people, you can turn it on, turn off your shutter, the silent. When you're doing street photography, you can turn it on silent. Birds, anything, or if you're out with friends doing time lapses, that's a perfect opportunity. Put it in the shutter. makes that noise because there's mechanisms moving in there. It'll also reduce the vibrations on your camera. And there's a few places, few features that recommend you do that. So, the less your camera moves, the better. The sharper it'll be. So check your manual and see if you have that feature on your camera. And if you do, just keep it in the back of your mind if you're out shooting and whatever it is, that noise is bothering whatever you're shooting, be it your neighbor or the birds or, whatever. Always something.
The only thing to remember is that if you're shooting with LED lights, you may get banding and other things with the silent shutter. Because that's the electronic. And depending upon what kind of lighting conditions you're in, it may cause a little bit of a problem. The other thing that can happen is you get the distortion if you're shooting really fast objects. A baseball bat or a tennis racket or something like that. If you're going with the electronic shutter, which is what the silent mode is, sometimes you'll get some effects. But other than that, it's really tends to get you a higher shutter or higher number of frames per second as well.
It's called rolling shutter. The distortion is called rolling shutter.
Right.
The Nikon Z9 is the only one that is completely electronic shutter. There is no shutter in the camera.
Oh, really?
They have resolved almost completely. I mean, it would have to be very bizarre situations that you actually will see it. But they have a very unique sensor that they came up with.
Interesting.
That handles it extremely well, since it doesn't have a shutter at all.
Right. Wow.
So it's got to do with how fast you can read the sensor.
Yeah.
It depends upon who you're listening to. I hear that the Nikon still has a lot of problems with that.
I'm sure it does. Oh, what was
But
that?
since I don't have one and don't know anyone who does have one.
Oh, Jason.
Jason's got one, yeah.
Pretty sure. Has he got his Z9?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sadly, he's not on anymore.
Yeah, I know. It would be interesting to know because, and that's one of those, it's kind of a unique situation that causes real problems with rolling shutter. But if you shoot sports or race cars, that's something you got to kind of sort of at least a little bit look at. But actually, in some cases, you get a really neat effect that the bat is bending or the ball is elongated and stuff like that. So I'm not sure that it's not really a defect. It may well be a feature.
I always say that I screw up something, it could create something even more interesting. You never know. I plan to do that. All right. I think that's all I have. That's all there are so many other features, like I said. I mean, look at all these different features. You can reset the reset shooting menu. I'm sure everybody has it. Let's say you go in and you do a bunch of crap and you're like, I don't want it. Just go back to the way it was when you bought it. You can reset your shooting menu. You can change your storage folder you can change the way you name your files. You can change which slot. Now in my camera, the two card slots are different. So one is an XQD or a CF Express. The other slot is an SD card. So I can tell it now if I want certain shots to go into one card, not the other, I can choose that from here. I can choose what to do with the secondary shot, which most cameras can. This is the choose image area. I think we can talk about this. So the Nikon has the full frame, the 36:24 ratio. You can have it look like Jesus, my brain. We gotta start having meetings on weekends because I just can't think after work. The DX, the crop sensor ratio. Then you can do 4x5s, 5x4s, whatever you want to call it. Square or the panorama. These are all the options. Now other systems have different options. So, but like I said, once you use these in the Nikon, it will get rid of the pixels. If you choose the 5x4, it will get rid of the, because right now, normally full frame, 36x24. It'll get rid of those 6 megapixels. So you can see it. Anyway, but other cameras do not get rid of them. The Fuji does not. I don't think Canon or I think that Nikon's the only one that does that. But if you're a person that likes to see what it's going to look like, let's say, oh, I really would like to shoot a panel, a lazy panel. I am all about the lazy panel. No sense in 350 million megapixel shot because I shot 20 million shots like somebody else here does. That you can't even process because it's taking up too much of your juice on your computer.
Hey,
I love one
Lightroom has a limit.
Or Delphin. I'm picking on Delphin. How many shots in that one panel you did? Was it 20?
Oh, it was over 20 frames of 47 megapixel. And I think that the limit is like I forgot how many gigabytes, but it was actually the size of the image surpassed the allowed amount on Lightroom. I did not reach the memory limit. I reached the pixel limit of Lightroom.
And the funny thing is that when you're done, nobody can see it.
I know, but I was working with it. You should see it was a nightmare, a week of that stuff.
Poor Delphin. Yeah, I'm like, take one shot, crop the top, crop the bottom. I got a panel. I'm very happy with that. I have no shame in cropping the top and bottom to create a panel. None. My motto is work smarter, not harder. Anyway, so if you're one like that, if you manual, you can do things. Check your manual, go in, Google your camera brand and model, and see if they have an online manual like this. Because it's so helpful to see, and they really go into all the details. So, and then make sure.
Barb, the only other thing that I would add to what you've said, actually, 2 things in a comment. One of the things that I find the most useful in shooting is setting back button focus.
Yeah.
By separating the focus away from your shutter button to your focus set or whatever your camera calls it. I think that is for me anyway, is one of the most useful things, whether I'm shooting birds or if I'm shooting a portrait. Yeah. Because I can literally set the focus point, take my finger off, move, recompose if I want to.
Absolutely.
If with iFocus, it works with animal detect or whatever, and that's one of the things that I find very useful. And all cameras let you do that, and it really does help.
Absolutely.
The second thing is more of a comment. You really need to get your own YouTube channel. You're as good as most of the people that you tout that you're doing. And I'll just leave it at that. But I think you could easily be making buku bucks as a YouTuber and influencer. You ought to think about it.
I will think about that. I'm gonna need a new AC unit pretty soon. So thank you. We'll see. We'll see. I need more time. Anyway, does anybody have any questions about what we went over? Huh? What did you want to say, Hugh? You're muted. Oh, okay. You're still muted. Now you go.
Okay. Yeah, having enough time to do it is certainly one of the issues. But I think that you have definitely reached the level that you're as good as most of the other folks that are out there on YouTube.
Thank you. You know, I probably would if I didn't have to edit video because I really don't know how to do that. I mean, I took me an hour one time just to cut part of something out. I'm sure it's like anything else. I could learn it quick enough, but I'll give that some thought, Hugh. Thank you.
Actually, another thought to go along with that, I need to learn video editing too. Maybe we need a meeting or whatever on if we've got someone, Jason comes to mind, that can talk to us about whether to use DaVinci or to go the Adobe route, uh, kind of the things that we need to do to learn how to use that software. I'm shooting more and more, particularly underwater video, and I really don't have a clue how to make it, how to do the whole editing thing.
DaVinci
Great.
Resolve is free.
Yeah, but we don't know how to use it.
I do. Not great, but I know how to use it because that's how my videos are
Yeah,
edited.
this is the person you don't want teaching us.
Excuse me. I also do Premiere.
What Hugh was saying was we need to get somebody that knows how to edit
Okay.
video.
Oh, I'm glad not to be of service.
No, but he mentioned Jason. He said Jason does he edits.
But
video
Jason
all the
only
time.
does Adobe Premiere.
But they're kind of similar, aren't they?
No,
No?
no, they're not. They're in the very basic way it is, but once you start cutting and inserting stuff and putting titles, it is very different because I have to do it for work, and I use Premiere for work, and I use DaVinci at home.
Okay.
And I do know a great video on how to use Premiere Pro. Fantastic lady. She went through that she was godly. I could send
I
you
do
links
know
to her
there's
stuff.
a YouTube channel just for DaVinci, the free movie editor.
Yeah.
I subscribe to it. I don't watch it because yeah, I'm one of these. If I'm gonna learn, I gotta sit down and I'm just gonna do that for the next 3 hours, and I'm gonna watch and watch and watch.
And by the
And when
way,
I'm watching
go
YouTube,
ahead, sorry.
I said when I'm watching YouTube, I like to watch my little 10, 15 minute intervals, but to learn something like that, I have to actually sit down and a long time.
So, Delphin, do you have a preference? I mean, yeah, DaVinci is free, but given the usability and stuff like that, what's your preference?
Actually, it depends what you're used to. I hear people that will swear by Final Cut, which is the Apple product, which is very different than both of them, has a different concept altogether. Every movie right now being put out, the color, oh, what's the word? They don't use color matching. What's the word? Now my mind is slipping. The color grading, all the movies right now being released is being done on DaVinci Resolve because it is that good at it, much better than Premiere Pro. To be honest with you, I don't want to pay Adobe another penny. You can put DaVinci. I mean, DaVinci is professional level, and you can get higher. They add some features that you do have to pay for, but they're so obscure for somebody doing home videos that it's not worth it. And like I said, it's free. You can try it. There's a ton of tutorials out there for DaVinci Resolve. I don't see the need to pay for Adobe Premiere Pro. For YouTube videos, it's perfectly fine. You can do titles, you can do 3D, you can do all kinds of bleeds. I mean, there's more stuff that I know how to use. I know it's there. And audio editing, it really is an impressive product, especially since it's free for home use. If you're doing a movie, no. And I'm not too sure if you're making money from YouTube if the rules change or not. It's
That would be
the guy
worth
that
finding
the
out.
company that puts it out is Black Magic. You know, the Black Magic video camera. That's who owns
Right.
Vinci.
I'll ask Jason to see if he'll do a little, maybe in
Yeah.
another, because I don't think the whole club wants to see it, but we can find out, you know, if people are interested. Otherwise, we can maybe do it on another like, weekend or something. One afternoon, he could go through a little bit. It would be interesting because I've always I've you know even asked my guru friends, I said, why don't you show us how you edit video? There was a guy, oh my God, before when I went to Paris, I was following like 3 different YouTubers from Paris. And one guy, his name is Jay Swanson, he used to do like a 3-hour live YouTube and he would show how he edited his videos. And this was 5 years ago. So I don't know if he still does it, but I was like, holy crap. I mean, I was blown away. So it's a lot. There's a lot to it, I think. But I think if somebody could like put together a basics so that we could at least start editing and not get, you know, learn little fancier things as we go along, that would be a good thing. You know what? I'll look around right now on YouTube to see if I can find something that will help. There's this one guy I follow and he does this 30 days of Lightroom, 30 days of Photoshop. I'll see if he does a video one, but he's very thorough. Very, you know, he hits all the little things that you need to know. Doesn't just skim over stuff, and it's real helpful. I'll see if I can find something.
Cool. Thanks a bunch, Bob.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions before we end?
No questions.
Oscar's still awake.
I can't have no other choice.
Nomer's still awake. Yay! I don't know about Ray. I think we put him to sleep. Anyway.
Thank you so much.
Huh? So yeah, all of y'all with the you know, take a look at your menus. Have fun with it. Especially that multiple exposure. Those are a blast. All right,
If
anything
you
else?
want to look at some that Dave Black, who is a Nikon, whatever the Explorer of Light for Nikon is, he does a lot of those kinds of things. Really great. He shoots sports. He shoots nighttime stuff. He's a big time light guy and just a really good instructor and a great photographer. So if you're a Nikon guy, he's a great guy to follow.
What's his name? Dave Black?
Dave Black.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I will run over to do that right now. All right. I guess that's all we have. Not this weekend, but the next weekend, we're going to Everglades, Perseids, little short hike. No car lights. No car lights.
Barb, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Barb.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Thank you. Good
Good
night.
night,
All right, good
everyone.
night.
Good night, everyone.